At 6:30 a.m. local time, two U.S. Navy MH-60 Romeo Seahawk helicopters from the USS Eisenhower and USS Gravely were conducting routine maritime patrol over the southern Red Sea. The patrol had been relatively quiet, radar screens showing nothing but commercial traffic and scattered fishing vessels. Then, in a matter of seconds, everything changed. Four Houthi attack boats, moving at 48 knots in a coordinated swarm formation, opened fire on the Maersk Hangzhou, a 300-meter container ship carrying $80 million in cargo. PKM machine guns rattled. RPG-7 launchers prepared to fire. Over 20 militants, armed to the teeth, closed within 20 meters of the vessel, certain this would be another easy prize. But what they didn't know was that 26 nautical miles away, those two American helicopters had just received the distress call and were already accelerating to maximum speed. In exactly 9 minutes, the Houthis' laughter would be silenced forever. Because when you open fire on a vessel under American protection, you don't get trials or negotiations. You get .50 caliber justice delivered at 1,100 rounds per minute. The Houthis had been terrorizing the Red Sea for months, launching missiles and drones at anything remotely connected to Israel or Western interests. They thought they were untouchable, hiding behind international law, using civilian boats as shields, operating in the gray zone between piracy and warfare. They were about to learn that gray zones disappear when you open fire on American helicopters. Because what started as a boarding attempt would end with 4 boats at the bottom of the Red Sea and a message written in steel and fire. You don't attack under the American flag and live to tell about it. Subscribe and witness how the U.S. Navy turned Houthi aggression into a death sentence. 24 hours earlier, the Maersk Hangzhou had already survived one attack. The previous evening at 8:30 p.m., Houthi forces launched 2 C-802 anti-ship cruise missiles from positions near Hodeida. Iranian-supplied weapons capable of carrying 363-pound warheads at Mach 0.9. Each missile packed enough explosive power to crack a destroyer's hull. The ship's embarked security team from Trident Group had exactly 34 seconds to react. They deployed 4 Mk-53 Nulka decoys, hovering devices that mimicked the ship's radar signature. Both missiles took the bait, detonating against decoys at 500 meters. The Maersk Hangzhou steamed on, shaken but intact. But the Houthis weren't done. By the following dawn, the Maersk Hangzhou was 55 nautical miles southwest of Al-Hodeida, still in the Red Sea's southern corridor. The ship's captain, a 58-year-old Norwegian veteran of these waters, thought the worst was over. He was catastrophically wrong. At exactly 6:27 a.m., the security team's lookout spotted them. 4 Boghammer-style fast attack boats, each 7 to 8 meters long, cutting white wakes at 48 knots in a coordinated wolfpack formation. Iranian-taught swarm tactics, and they were heading directly for the Maersk Hangzhou. The security team went to battle stations. 8 contractors grabbed M4 carbines and rushed to defensive positions. 2 operators manned a belt-fed M240B machine gun mounted near the stern, 650 rounds per minute, 1,800-meter effective range. Against what was coming, it would barely be enough. The Houthi boats were modified Iranian Boghammer Mk 5 variants. Each carried 5 to 6 militants armed with PKM machine guns, RPG-7 launchers, and AK-47s. Over 20 fighters total. Every boat had a Starlink terminal providing real-time targeting data from coastal spotters and overhead drones. At 6:29 a.m., the Houthis opened fire. PKM rounds began hammering the Maersk Hangzhou's superstructure, punching through aluminum siding and shattering windows. The ship's alarm system wailed across every deck. Crew members dove for cover as bullets tore through the bridge windows, spraying glass across navigation consoles. The security team returned fire immediately, M4S cracking in controlled bursts. The M240B opened up with long, sweeping bursts that sent tracers skipping across the water like angry hornets. One boat took hits to its engine cowling, smoke beginning to pour from the outboard, but it didn't stop. The militants kept coming, their PKMs rattling off sustained bursts that sparked against the ship's steel hull. At 600 meters, the first RPG launched. The rocket-propelled grenade, likely a thermobaric TBG-7V variant, streaked toward the ship trailing white smoke. It missed the superstructure by 3 meters, detonating against the water with a concussive boom that shook the entire vessel. The security team's M240B gunner adjusted fire, walking rounds across Boat 2's position. He scored hits on the hull but couldn't stop the momentum. The boats were closing too fast. Another RPG round whistled overhead, this one punching through a cargo container stacked on deck. The explosion inside sent metal fragments screaming in all directions. The Houthis were now at 400 meters and closing, within range to board. And that's when the captain triggered the emergency distress beacon. Like and subscribe to see how American technology turned the tide in 9 minutes. The signal reached the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower exactly 8 seconds after transmission. CVN-69, a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier displacing 100,000 tons, was the flagship of Carrier Strike Group 2. The ship carried 90 aircraft, 6,000 personnel, and enough firepower to level a small nation. Its 2 nuclear reactors could generate power equivalent to a small city, driving the massive vessel at over 30 knots through any ocean on Earth. But right now, all that mattered were 2 helicopters. At 6:30 a.m., the Eisenhower's Combat Direction Center classified the distress call as Priority Alpha, hostile boarding in progress. Within 45 seconds, 2 MH-60R Romeo Seahawks scrambled. Call signs Lancer 71 and Lancer 72. The MH-60R Romeo costs $42 million and carries sensor suites more sophisticated than most fighter jets. But today, they would be gunships. Both helicopters were armed with 2 GAU-21 A.50 caliber machine guns, one mounted on each side door. These weapons fired at 1,100 rounds per minute with a 850-meter effective range. Each round weighed half a pound and could punch through engine blocks. The USS Gravely, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer 15 nautical miles east, launched her own MH-60R as backup. The chess pieces were moving. Lancer 71 lifted off at 6:31 a.m., followed 6 seconds later by Lancer 72. Both helicopters pushed to maximum cruise speed, 160 knots. At that velocity, the 26 nautical mile gap would take 9 minutes to close. Too long. But the Seahawks weren't flying blind. Both aircraft carried an APS-153V multi-mode radar that could detect small surface contacts at 50 nautical miles. Within 30 seconds of takeoff, Lancer 71's radar operator had painted all 4 Houthi boats, courses, and speeds, updating every 2 seconds. The tactical picture was grim. The boats were at 200 meters from the Maersk Hangzhou. The security team's M240B had burned through 400 rounds, scoring multiple hits, but the Houthis kept coming. They were seconds away from getting aboard. At 6:34 a.m., Lancer 71's pilot requested weapons-free authorization from the strike group commander. The request took 23 seconds. The answer was 2 words: cleared hot. The helicopters were still 5 minutes out. On the Maersk Hangzhou, the security team was down to their last M240B belt. Boats 1 and 2 were at 80 meters, closing fast. Boats 3 and 4 flanked from port at 100 meters, cutting off escape routes. At 6:37 a.m., Lancer 71 and 72 came within visual range. The lead helicopter descended to 150 feet and activated missile warning systems. The boats finally noticed them. At 6:38 a.m., the Houthi militants made their fatal mistake. They turned their PKM machine guns skyward and opened fire on the American helicopters. Tracers arced toward Lancer 71, passing within 15 meters of the cockpit. Under international law, that was all the justification needed. What happened next took 4 minutes, but it would echo for years. At 6:39 a.m., both helicopters unleashed hell. Lancer 71's starboard door gunner locked onto Boat 1 and squeezed the trigger. The GAU-21 roared to life, spitting .50 caliber rounds at over 18 rounds per second. The ammunition was a mix of M2 ball, M8 armor-piercing incendiary, and M17 tracer rounds. The first burst, 23 rounds in 1.3 seconds, stitched across the boat's waterline. 3 rounds punched through the boat's fuel cell, a 90-liter tank mounted amidships. The M8 API rounds ignited the gasoline on contact. The resulting fireball engulfed the entire boat, flames shooting 40 feet into the air. Boat 1 was gone in less than 8 seconds. Lancer 71 pivoted left, the pilot banking hard while the gunner tracked his next target. Boat 2 attempted to break away, throttle wide open, black smoke pouring from damaged engines. The helicopter's gunner didn't give them the chance. A 3-second burst, 54 rounds, shredded the boat's stern. The outboard motor disintegrated. The boat listed hard to starboard. It capsized at 6:40 a.m., rolling completely over before sinking stern first. 4 more militants gone. Meanwhile, Lancer 72's port gunner engaged Boat 3 on the opposite side. The Houthis were trying to scatter now, breaking formation in panic. It didn't matter. The GAU-21's effective range was 1,850 meters. The boats were at 400 meters. It was target practice. A sustained burst tore through Boat 3's hull, ripping apart the fiberglass structure. The boat didn't sink, it disintegrated. 6 more dead. Boat 4 tried to fight back. A Houthi gunner aimed his PKM at Lancer 72 and fired a long, desperate burst. Both American helicopters converged on his position, door gunners firing simultaneously. Over 120 rounds impacted Boat 4 in less than 5 seconds. The boat literally came apart. Hull sections separating as .50 caliber impacts tore through every structural member. 5 more dead. At 6:43 a.m., it was over. 4 boats destroyed. 20 Houthi militants killed. Approximately 1,800 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition expended. 0 American casualties. 0 damage to American aircraft. The Maersk Hangzhou, riddled with bullet holes but still afloat, steamed north under escort. The ocean surface was littered with debris. The American helicopters circled overhead, door gunners watching through their sights, ready to engage if any hostile action resumed. None came. The fight was over. But the U.S. Navy wasn't finished. Within 8 hours, the USS Gravely received orders: suppress Houthi coastal radar installations. At 2:47 p.m., the destroyer opened fire with her 5-inch 62 caliber Mark 45 Mod 4 naval gun. 70-pound projectiles at 2,600 feet per second. She fired 92 rounds total. The first target was Jabal al-Tar radar site. 23 rounds of high-explosive shells shattered the antenna, collapsed control buildings, ignited stored fuel. The site went dark. Next was Al-Muka, then Ras Isa. By sundown, 3 radar installations were rubble. The Houthis had lost 60% of their maritime surveillance capability. The following day, 4 Fa-18E Super Hornets launched with AGM-154C joint standoff weapons. Target Al-Durahima Missile Warehouse. Each JSO carried a 500-pound warhead capable of penetrating 11 feet of reinforced concrete. At 6:43 p.m., 4 missiles impacted. The warehouse and everything in it, 18 Qasef drones, 4 Noor anti-ship missiles, guidance computers, 2 Iranian advisors, vaporized. Total loss. The final tally, 4 Houthi vessels destroyed. 20 confirmed kills in the boat attack. 3 radar sites eliminated. 1 weapons depot obliterated. Combined casualties exceeded 30, all in 36 hours. The message echoed across the Middle East. The United States had changed the rules. For months, the Houthis operated in a gray zone, attacking shipping while hiding behind international law. They launched missiles, then claimed civilian status. They fired on helicopters, then demanded prisoner of war protections. That gray zone no longer existed. After this engagement, Houthi attacks in the Red Sea dropped 73%. Commercial vessels returned to normal routes. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait reopened to normal traffic. The wreckage of those 4 boats still rests on the Red Sea floor, a silent monument to what happens when ideology meets overwhelming force. The message was clear to every militant watching from Yemen to Somalia. You cannot fire on American helicopters and expect to see another sunrise. If you believe in American strength and the men and women who defend freedom on every ocean, subscribe and share this story. Because the Red Sea isn't a gray zone anymore.